as you can see from this slide, I work for the funding, data and financial monitoring team. And today, alongside two of my colleagues, Julie and Ruth, we're going to be just talking through some of the local authority assurance things with you. So in this workshop, what we're going to be looking at is what do we mean by the LA assurance collections, when these collections happen, how these collections happen, who plays a role in these collections, and why we request this data from yourselves for these collections. So first off, we've got the DSG assurance statement. Under the Section 151 of the Local Government Act, the Chief Finance Officer of the local authority is responsible for making the necessary arrangements for local financial and management controls. Under these arrangements, the CFO will need to ensure that the grant monies for the DSG are expended for the purpose for which they are intended. This assurance statement provides an audit to document how the DSG has been deployed and whether there was any issues, for instance, fraud cases within LA maintained schools. The formal terms of grant given by the Secretary of State under Section 16 of the Education Act. The deadline for submitting the 22-23 DSG assurance statement is the 10th of November. So obviously, if they haven't already completed that, we are sort of a month away from the deadline there. There's also more information on that on gov.uk, and that slide there shows the assurance statement. So CFR next. CFR is a framework provided a standard template for schools to collect information about their income and expenditure by each financial year, which the maintained schools will then provide to the local authorities yourselves in a financial statement each year. These statements will include school resources received in the financial year, including anything that's unspent at the end of a previous financial year, the application of any of the school's resources, and the summary of the school's financial position at the end of the year. This information is uploaded to the DFE Collect system. Data collected we use to support benchmarking and comparison of schools' income and expenditure, and there's a link below there for the CFR guidance on the gov.uk website. So this is just a typical delivery cycle for the CFR. As you can see there, the Collect Blade goes live beginning of April, and then almost from the first submissions, we carry out data validations on that, which can take any length of time dependent on when the submissions are received to ourselves. The beginning of August, we'll close collect to yourselves while we finish up collating the rest of the data, and then approximately December time, the CFR data will then be added to the benchmarking website and gov.uk. So this is just basically a letter talking about the performance website there, which you can access yourselves using the link provided once the document is sent out to you. So this is basically, you can just look at all the dates for all of England. You can look at spend per pupils, etc. You can look at income and expenditure in each school. This is basically like the raw CFR data that we work with and put together using what's provided to us. So this is just a slide that's saying what we were expecting to receive, which is just over 12,500. And then obviously it gives you a breakdown there of what's been authorised, what hasn't been authorised, and in what areas that is. So as you can see here, this is a table that shows you by the school benchmarking website. Basically, it's a cloud-based application for benchmarking schools and academies, which uses a range of comparison algorithms What this does, it enables quick and easy data entry, management of school and academy data, and provides powerful visualization of financial charts. This tool is there to provide schools with the ability to make comparisons between an individual school or academy trust spending in various categories with those of similar schools or trusts. This information could be used by school leaders to inform their spending decisions and to identify if and where spending changes could be made to support pupil progress with the available level of resource. The tool is a key element of the department's school resource management programme. Prior to 2017, the department had two separate benchmarking websites, LA and academies. Because these were separate, it was not possible to easily compare the income and expenditure of maintained schools with academies and vice versa. So basically, this is why we then created the new benchmarking table, which can compare the two. This site draws information from the LA CFR data and academy accounts return. So it's important that the CFR data we receive is correct, so that then enables us to produce effective benchmarking. This site is continually being developed. Us ourselves, the service owners for this website, tasked with resolving queries and with future development if required. So moving on now to the section 251 budget. As you can see there, local authorities required under section 251 to prepare and submit statements of education and children's services spending and income. Local authorities complete and submit their return using the department's centralised data collection and management system for education, Collect. Local authorities must submit their budgets by the published deadline, which is usually around the end of April. I do have a slide a little bit later on with the timelines for budget and outturn. So yeah, as it says there, they complete and submit their budget using our Collect system. So a little bit more about the budget. So the S251 budget involves a collection of high volumes of detailed data within defined tables, with an aggregate of over 500 cells of data across 3 tables and submissions from all local authorities that submit their annual budget. Around 76,000 items of data are submitted to the ESFA. The budget statement is intended to provide clear pictures of the authority's planned spending. This includes how much a local authority intends to spend on the below: schools budget, dedelegated items, high needs and early years, central provision within the school budget, and children's and young people's services. So as you can see here, this is just a link to the where you can find the detailed guidance on the section 251 and how to complete the document. So following on from the outturn, following on from the budget, sorry, is the outturn, which is covered by the legislation listed on their slides there. The local authorities submit the outturn in about August this year, which we are currently working through the QA on. The outturn statement is intended to provide schools, parents and others with an interest in education and children's services with details about schools and local authorities' funding and expenditure. It can also inform the Treasury for monitoring purposes. As with the budget, the outturn data is required to inform about different levels of expenditure between local authorities and school, of education for the publication of statistics, benchmarking tables, and as before, any parliamentary questions, etc. The funding data and financial monitoring team, which is what I work for, have overall responsibility for ensuring that the section 251 collections are delivered on time and that data validation is undertaken so that we have robust data sets. Any of you that have submitted these before will have had conversations with me or my colleagues in relation to chasing up figures, etc., with yourselves. We work with numerous stakeholders: Education Data Division, Data Outputs Division, who write the technical specification for the tables, and then publish the statistical reliefs. So we emphasise the need for sort of good quality data on both collections. As I said, we're only a small team. There's only 4 of us that work through these collections. So the better the quality of the data early on, the less backwards and forwards we have between ourselves and yourselves there. So this here is the delivery cycle example. So the darker blue is the budget, and the lighter one on the inside is the outturn. I'm not going to read through all that. Like I say, you will be receiving a copy of the slide, so you can have a look at that yourself. But as you can see here, currently we're in the analysis of this section 251 outturn data. So we'll be checking through the submissions we've received for any figures that don't look correct, and going back to local authorities for clarification on these, and any amendments that need to be made can then be made through the collect system. So next, we have some of the sort of regular issues and sense checks that we carry out around the section 251. So we've got basically the income matching the expenditure. So the lines that need to tally up, otherwise that's going to mean that we'll be chasing up these issues with yourself. So this just outlines a few of the common areas where we may have issues to raise. Some certain lines we don't normally expect to have expenditure on, so if we see expenditure on a line, we'll go back and query where that's come from, and vice versa. So as you can see there, that just lists a few of what we see more regularly, which lines cause problems. And again, in relation to the reconciliation with the DSG notes to accounts, this just shows some areas on the left hand side there of the notes to accounts against where they need to tally up the section 251 lines, and obviously these figures need to match because obviously they're both provided by the local authorities, and like I said, currently this is what we're going through. So we will query any figures that don't tally up between the DSG notes to the accounts and the section 251 as it's submitted. So as I mentioned before, these are submitted through the collect system, and we have now got a XML generator that we developed a few years ago, which we hope to sort of improve the ease of yourselves being able to upload this information onto our collect system. So the collect system's a useful tool. It's a real-time data collection, so we can be looking at things, and then we can, if we have any queries, you can then access it and update things, and it comes backwards and forwards between ourselves like that. It also has a number of inbuilt validation and error parameters, which any of you guys who have used it will know. Flag figures that are outside an expected range, and then it allows you to input notes onto the system prior to submission as to why these figures are out of what we would expect that to be, which then helps us in turn when it comes to the QA of these documents. If there's notes on these errors, then obviously that provides us with information as to why these figures can differ, because obviously there is sometimes reasons why these would be out of a specific range or what we might see normally. As I mentioned, 1920, we introduced the Excel Pro Forma, which can be populated and uploaded to collect system via just a single click of the button. We did this by hoping to streamline the data collection stage for yourselves, while also making the validation easier for the DFE staff. So this is just a slide which shows just the LA school budget table, which is just one area that's included in the section 251, just basically to give you an idea of sort of the amount of data that is required. This is just one area of it. So there's multiple lines there, as you can see, ranging from central support services, welfare services, statutory duties, hospital education, different things like that. So it's just to give you an idea of some of the lines that we deal with. And like I say, this is just one sort of section of it. And again, this is the high needs data here. That's the early years pro forma. So as you can see there, it shows the different ways things are funded, lump sums per hour, and obviously it shows there the amounts that the anticipated budgets, number of units, etc. Which again is just another example of the area, the amount of information that is collected within. Finally, yes, well, the self-assessment management tool, which was previously the SFVS. So the school resource management tool helps provide trusts, local authorities and school governors with the assurance that they are meeting the basic standards necessary to achieve a good level of financial health and resource management. The checklist is a checklist which asks questions in 6 areas of resource management to provide assurance that the school is managing its resources effectively. This should be completed at school level, the same way as the SFVS was prior. The answer to these questions feed into a dashboard which shows how school data compares to thresholds on a range of statistics that have been identified as indicators for good resource management and outcomes. This is shown in a RAG rating against other schools of a similar demographic. So now that's my section done. I'll hand over to my colleague Ruth, who will talk to you a little bit about the Officer Grant Return Certificates, and then following Ruth will be Julie. We'll just give you a little bit of a rundown of who plays a role in these collections and the data, etc.
Hello. Hopefully I've clicked the right button and I've now got control of the slides. So I want to talk to you a bit about the Section 151 return for everything that isn't DSG. So this one covers all payments made to LAs by the SFA except for DSG. And it's your declaration that funds have been passed on to schools correctly, conditions met, and it also gives you the opportunity to let us know of any over or underspend and any concerns about fraud. It does include grants that are paid on an academic year as well as those on a financial year, but only for that financial year period. So that could cover 2 academic years. Historically, we collected this information separately for pre and post 16 and in quite a manual way, but earlier this year we brought together the age groups and we also introduced a more systemised data collection. I've laid out the timings on this slide that we used for the year just past. Coming year will follow a similar timetable, but the online form opening will take account of where the Easter holidays fall, so the dates will move a little bit for that. So following your final financial year payments made to you and you passing them on to your schools, we then open the online form and give you the chance to check the data and challenge or query your figures. And then we assure that data, answer your queries, review and pass any findings across to the National Audit Office for them to review as well, and to comment back to allow us to then lay the DFE accounts before Parliament pre-recess. Once that's all gone through, then we start the calculation and action of any recoveries that are required, and we're just coming towards the close of that for notification and action in November. So, firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone for persevering with the new layout and the new system. It's always difficult when we bring in any changes, and we're able to submit their funding lines in the final certificate. We know that it's an additional burden when we make those changes. So, yeah, a huge thank you. We got everybody's final certificate in, and the majority of that happened all through the system with only just 1 or 2 manual returns. So we started to conduct now the lessons learned work, as we would do with any new thing that we're rolling out, so that we can see what works and what doesn't. So we've looked at why there were a higher than expected number of funding line challenges and also a larger number of queries received than we were hoping for. We've started some planning on what we can do to move towards a point where you're less likely to need to raise challenges and queries. These actions broadly fall into three main areas. Most importantly, we need to ensure that the data shown to you as your payments is correct. We know that wasn't the case initially this year. We've improved our processes and how we pull that information together. So that is definitely going to be much improved. But also providing clearer information in two key areas. Firstly, what the figures we are showing you include or don't include, particularly in the post-16 space where it's quite complicated around what does and doesn't fall into the broader categories of things like adult education budget, and also how to treat funds paid on an academic year basis. Because again, that's not always clear and it's not always necessarily quite exactly the same depending on the fund. One really helpful thing that you can do for us is to keep us up to date with your signatory. So if there's any changes to your S151 officer within the year, not waiting until there's a return due, just let us know as soon as you can, and then we can provide you with a form to submit the signatory that we then check against. So whilst some of you helpfully provided your thoughts on the new process alongside your queries, and we have taken those into account, we would like to take the opportunity to gather more insights so we can make improvements to the process, to the form and to the guidance ahead of the next collection. So what we want to know is what worked well for you and we should keep, what didn't work for you or made the process more difficult, and anything that was missing or could make it even better. So my plea to you is if you've got any thoughts or comments to share, or even better, if you could spare an hour to walk through the form with our user researchers, please let us know using the address on screen by the end of the month. This address is really only for these queries and comments around this form, and to volunteer to for the user research. All of the queries need to go through the normal enquiries web form.
My name's Julie Glendenning. I'm the statistician who works on the data outputs that come from the Section 251 budget collection, Section 251 outturn collection, and the CFR collection. Basically, who works on the data that you send in? We have the ESFA, who take the data and do various things with it. We have the data operations who look at the collect system, who create the collect system for us, and create the final data outputs. And then you have data insight and statistics division, which is me, who do the data manipulation. We link it to other data sources, interpret the data and present it in the numerous outputs that we do. Why do we need the data? We have a responsibility to publish it. We also provide the data to finance managers, chief finance officers, school business managers, head teachers, governors, multi-academy trusts for benchmarking, local authority finance managers, community, parents, learners. The media also will ask us questions about the data and what it shows. We have 2 annual official statistics publications. There is one at the end of September, which is planned LA and school finance. This is the publication that comes from Section 251 budget, and the last edition of these statistics was published at the end of September. We then have LA and school expenditure, which is published at the beginning of December. It's usually round about 8th, 9th, 10th, up to about the 12th, depending on where the second Thursday in December falls. And that includes data from CFR, which is aggregated to local authority, regional and national level, and Section 251 outturn, which gives information also on education expenditure plus education, other education and expenditure on children's services. We also supply information from the CFR collection, which goes to the financial benchmarking website. That is usually updated around about October, November time with the local authority maintained schools, and then we will update again in March from the AAR return for the academies. That allows them to compare their financial performance and things against other schools. We have freedom of information requests. We get quite a lot of information requests from the public about what schools are spending money on, how much is being spent on teaching staff, supply staff, energy costs, etc., etc. Various parliamentary questions from MPs as to what local authorities and schools are spending. And we also have the benchmarking report cards. These are sent out to local authority maintained schools around about November time, and academies will get theirs in about March. These take comparator schools and compare the school's financial performance against other schools in the area. We wouldn't compare a small primary school with a very low FSM rate to a large inner city primary school with a high FSM rate. It just wouldn't be a fair comparison, so we wouldn't do it. We also supply the data to the View My Financial Insights, and it goes up onto their website as well. Without the data, we can't meet responsibilities of accountability and transparency. We can't compare across locations to enable more informed decision making, and we can't provide senior officials and ministers with recommendations for evidence-based decisions. When we're talking about evidence-based decisions, we need that evidence, and the evidence that we have here is your data. It does go into an awful lot of various, the FOIs, the PQs, the standard publications, and then the benchmarking, financial benchmarking website, benchmarking report cards, etc. So there is quite a range where the data goes to.
Yeah, so that last slide there just gives you some contacts. So you've got the top bit there is where you can contact myself and other members of our team in relation to the outturn and the budget. And then obviously underneath there are some links to the benchmarking, LA and school expenditure table, etc. there.